What up, everyone? Welcome back to Blade Bias. Last time we went through my case, and one ballad song was mysteriously omitted from me kind of talking about, and that is because this has been in my collection for 2 years now. For 2 years now, I have owned the Arctic. The Arctic being the ballad song that gave me the passion to make my first video, the ballad song that really put me on the map, the ballad song that I think most of my older fans kind of know me by. Granted, we are on Blade Bias right now, so, it's a minority for sure. But back in the day, this was like my ballad song. Green Arctic, that was like my symbol, baby. Nowadays, you guys probably know me more for liking things like the Swift T or the Prisma Pro or something like that. But back in the day, it was the Nemesis and the Arctic, baby. So I figured I would do a video 2 years in on the Arctic. What do I think of it? What do I feel about it? Where does it sit in my collection? The Arctic 2 years in. Because if there's anything great about doing reviews, it's that things change over time, opinions change over time, and most importantly, preferences change over time. So I largely don't really agree with most of the stuff that I said in the Arctic video nowadays. Sure, most of it is still true. It's still a very well-made premium flipper. It's still a pretty good value. But, I said it was neutral, which I kick myself about before I go to bed. Every single day, don't you worry. But the Arctic in 2023, soon to be 2024, holy cow, is kind of showing its age. I still flip it. I still like it. It will always be home to me. Anyone who is has that original metal ballad song that you flipped with will kind of understand where I'm coming from. You go back and you flip that thing and it will always feel natural. You learn most of the basis for your tricks on it. Like the Z choker, I learned almost entirely on the Arctic, and it is almost automatic whenever I do it on this thing. Unless I mess it up like I just did. It's almost automatic. It just feels natural. It feels right. And that's how a lot of tricks feel on this. Anything that I really did back in the day, behind the 8-ball was a big one. It just feels natural on the Arctic because that's what I learned it on. Some of the newer tricks, double scissor, not really going to do me too well. Giraffe, probably not going to do me too well. Nope. But the OG stuff, it's nostalgic. The OG tricks just feel good on it. And even though it is so well outside my preferences, I still do really like it. But, like I said, it's kind of starting to show its age. The ballad song community has been moving towards lighter, maybe even longer ballad songs in recent years, with most ballad songs coming out nowadays being 4 ounces or less sometimes. And the Arctic just isn't that. We've got 4.5 ounces. It's short. It's like really short. The blade is kind of tiny. So it's heavy, and it's also very handle biased, which I know a lot of people are also moving away from. You do have people who enjoy it still, you've got people most of the people who are older in the community tend to enjoy heavier handle biased ballad songs, since that's what was around back then. I know Will is kind of in that camp. He loves the Invictus. I believe it's a heavier, more handle biased ballad song from what I remember, at least. So the Arctic definitely still has its place, but I think it is starting to show its age. It's no longer kind of the king of budget like it was when I was around. Back in the day, this was an amazing deal. The only people who could even come close to the quality that Glider was providing were Squid, and Squid weren't providing bushings on their ballad songs. So, and I should clarify, quality for the price, like $125, or I think it was $115 back then, was pretty much like the Arctic, the Vortex, and the Mako. And with the Vortex being so unobtainable sometimes, the Arctic was just kind of the second next choice. In fact, I got the Arctic because I missed out on the Mako drop, and I'm happy I did because I do think the Arctic is a bit of a better ballad song, or at least it was. Nowadays, though, I do think it gets beaten out by some things that have undercut it. You have things like the Vulp, which are, half its price, a little bit of a less handle bias. I still think the Arctic flips a little better because the Arctic can actually chaplain. But now you have things like the Orion, which are coming in and just flip spoiler alert for the week video, flip amazingly for the price. So I think the days of the Arctic being like the de facto budget recommendation, like it used to be when this was my main flipper, are kind of over. I still do think it's good. Don't think like, oh, he doesn't like the Arctic, it's not worth it, I shouldn't buy one. If you want to get one, go for it. Especially if you're a beginner. Newer flippers tend to enjoy handle bias. It makes tricks a little bit easier to perform. But it just, I do think we're starting to get into the twilight hours of the Arctic, especially with how little Glider's been dropping them recently. I do know that there were some in stock for a very long period of time, so, you know, the whole community is experiencing the demand issues, but I don't know. When I think of things to recommend people for $125, my mind doesn't jump to the Arctic anymore. So in my collection, it'll always be, it'll always be nostalgic for me. It's the thing that I learned on. It's the thing that I flipped probably the most back in the day. It'll always have that little bit of nostalgia, but I don't know. I think it just gets beaten out nowadays, by some other things in the similar price range. Even in my collection, the Arctics don't see too much use. This one's basically always on display because I love it. But this one kind of just sits in the case. I flip it sometimes just because it's out of my preferences. 4.5 ounces, pretty heavy by today's standards, pretty handle biased. It's just far out of kind of what I prefer to flip. So it doesn't see a whole lot of action from me, but that doesn't change the fact that I still do think overall it's pretty solid. The value proposition may not be there like it once was, but that's just kind of how it goes. As the hobby goes on and things get cheaper and people get better at their processes, the older stuff kind of begins to fade away, which, can't really complain about. I enjoy seeing the hobby progress forward, although I can't really say that too many people were shouting from the rooftops that the Arctic was amazing. Because anytime you even bring it up in conversation with half of the Balisong flippers in this community, they'll be like, glider? Ew, gross, squid clone. Squid clone? We're still on that? When's the last time Squid had an aluminum sandwich Balisong? Because I can tell you it's around the time that I started and around the time that I bought this. Because the Mako that I missed out on was the first drop of the V4, and that's the last time I remember Squid doing a sandwich Balisong at all. Because the Hydro isn't out, and the Nami is Chanwich, and the Swordfish is Chanwich. So yeah, the Arctic. Kind of ridiculed by a lot of people, but I know kind of loved by a lot of others. And I think in 2023, it does still hold up, but we're kind of approaching the end of what I would consider it to be like a super solid recommendation to people who want a more budget-friendly flipper. Although in my collection, it will always sit in a place of honor. It flips way better than it has any credit to flip to me. Because, again, complete opposite of my preferences. But it's so comfortable and it's built so well that, I can't help but kind of love it. It doesn't rank anywhere near my top favorites anymore. I don't even think I would put the Arctic in the top 3 trainers at this point. But nostalgia is a hell of a drug, right? Kind of the same thing with the Nemesis. The Nemesis is a bit more nostalgic for me than I think, it's more nostalgic to me than it is objectively good. Just how it goes, your old stuff, you're going to be nostalgic for it. So that's the Arctic in 2023, 2 years in. I look forward to see what Glider has cooking up next. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if an Arctic V3 will ever exist. It'd be pretty interesting to see. But yeah, I think that's about all I got. The Arctic will always be my boy. And you will always be at the end of this video because I have trapped you in time. Have fun in purgatory. See you next time. Peace.